This was unbelievable what I saw going down today in the Foreign Affairs Committee hearings. Do you remember Nina Jankovic? She's the one who became Biden's head of his Ministry of Truth. Yeah, they had a Ministry of Truth during the Biden years because they had to fight disinformation. Well, she was testifying today. You know, if you recall, she's the one who said she knew it all. She knew what was true, what was false, etc.
She's an expert on online disinformation.
Information laundering is really quite ferocious. It's when a huckster takes some lies and makes them sound precocious by saying them in Congress or a mainstream outlet. So disinformation's origins are slightly less atrocious. It's how you hide a little lie. It's how you hide a little lie. It's how you hide a little lie. When Rudy Giuliani shared bad intel from Ukraine, or when TikTok influencers say COVID can cause pain, they're laundering disinfo, and we really should take note and not support their lies with our wallet, voice, or vote. Oh!
But this is a person with extensive qualifications.
Oh dear. She really should have pursued a career on Broadway, though not talented enough for that. Anyway, she got her moment in the sun today. You see, she went to speak on Capitol Hill, along with Matt Taibbi, to talk about all the disinformation that was there, although, you know, she's living in an alternative universe where apparently she still hasn't recognized anything, including that the virus came from Wuhan, China, that the Russian dossier was fake. Although we know, of course, that Hillary Clinton's campaign commissioned it, bought and paid for by Perkins Coie, the law firm working for Hillary's campaign, and they paid Fusion GPS, which paid Christopher Steele. By the way, Nina's like Christopher Steele's biggest fan. Even Reason magazine, a libertarian magazine, actually had to call her out on that one because she like loves Christopher Steele. Anyway, she did this hearing today, and let's just say Nina once again managed to embarrass herself, and she didn't even have to sing this time. Here we go.
I believe it's my patriotic duty to do so because the premise of this hearing, the so-called censorship industrial complex, is a fiction that has not only had profound impacts on my life and safety, but on our national security. More alarmingly, this fiction is itself suppressing speech and stymieing critical research that protects our country. I want to acknowledge the irony we're having this discussion as we witness an assault on the First Amendment we have not seen in decades. The Trump administration has directed far more egregious violations of our Constitution than the imagined actions of the Biden administration on which this hearing is premised. Each one is chilling, but as a Fulbright alumna, the recent arrest of Rumesia Ozturk, a Fulbright PhD student at Tufts University, especially disturbed me.
I just had to stop it because she's like a caricature of herself. Like, have you ever seen anybody more annoying? Like, she might actually be more annoying than Hillary Clinton, which is saying something. Me and my Fulbright scholar. Anyway, she wants to talk about the Turkish woman who got arrested at Tufts University and was hauled off to Louisiana because, I don't know, the Turkish woman kind of sounds like a spy for Turkey and for some bad guys to me. And Marco Rubio has a lot of questions about her. We'll get to that. But in the meantime, the annoying woman, Nina Jankovic, who really does give Hillary Clinton, she's like a little mini Hillary Clinton, a run for her money.
The Secretary of State seemingly revoked Ms. Ozturk's visa for publishing an op-ed in Tufts campus newspaper. For using her constitutionally protected right to free speech, she was spirited away by plainclothes ICE officers in broad daylight. This is what I'm used to observing in authoritarian countries that I study. And if this had happened in a country in this subcommittee's portfolio, I think you'd issue a statement of concern. But it happened here. So yes, we do need some First Amendment protections at the State Department, but not for imagined transgressions of previous administrations. We need those protections from this administration today.
I'm reading your comments, guys. You guys are hysterical. Anyway, just to fill you in, I don't know how, we haven't covered this story much here before, but there's this woman at Tufts University who basically, her last name is Ozturk, is one of, according to CNN, several foreign nationals affiliated with prestigious American universities to be arrested for purported activities related to terror organizations amid the Trump administration's immigration crackdown. They include Mahmoud Khalil. We've talked about him, that Palestinian activist who was taken into custody outside his Columbia University apartment recently. He had gotten moved down to Louisiana, then moved to New Jersey. He's the one with the 8-month pregnant wife. In her order, Casper cited Columbia graduate and Palestinian activist Mahmoud Kahil's case, specifically referencing a New York judge's decision to not allow Kahil to be deported until a court settles whether it has jurisdiction over the case. So this is her lawyer, right? This Turkish woman's lawyer trying to say, well, wait a second, you can't deport her just yet. And you know what Marco Rubio says? Yeah, to hell with you people. Like, that makes literally no sense. Why do we have these students coming here that are supporting terror organizations and then writing op-eds and gathering people so that they can have protests on university campuses? Let me tell you, like, that's not okay, right? That's the kind of stuff that our intel operations should be all over all day long. It's one thing if you're an American, you have a different point of view, you want to get out there and protest. It's kind of another thing. Like, if you're coming here by our invitation to study at our great universities and you want to be a rabble-rouser? No, not happening, says Marco.
We revoked her visa. It's an F1 visa, I believe. We revoked it, and here's why. And I'll say it again. I said it everywhere. Let me be abundantly clear, okay? If you go apply for a visa right now, anywhere in the world, let me just send this message out. If you apply for a visa to enter the United States and be a student, and you tell us that the reason why you're coming to the United States is not just because you want to write op-eds, but because you want to participate in movements that are involved in doing things like vandalizing universities, harassing students, taking over buildings, creating a ruckus, we're not going to give you a visa. If you lie to us and get a visa and then enter the United States and with that visa participate in that sort of activity, we're going to take away your visa. And once you've lost your visa, you're no longer legally in the United States, and we have a right, like every country in the world has a right, to remove you from our country. So it's just that simple. I think it's crazy. I think it's stupid for any country in the world to welcome people into their country that are going to go to your universities as visitors. They're visitors. And say, I'm going to your universities to start a riot. I'm going to your universities to take over a library and harass people. I don't care what movement you're involved in. Why would any country in the world allow people to come and disrupt? Now, we gave you a visa to come and study and get a degree, not to become a social activist that tears up our university campuses. And if we've given you a visa and then you decide to do that, we're going to take it away. I encourage every country to do that, by the way, because I think it's crazy to invite students into your country that are coming onto your campus and destabilizing it. We're just not going to have it. So we'll revoke your visa, and once your visa is revoked, you're illegally in the country and you have to leave. Every country in the world has a right to decide who comes in as a visitor and who doesn't. If you invite me into your home because you say, I want to come to your house for dinner, and I go to your house and I start putting mud on your couch and spray painting your kitchen, I bet you're going to kick me out. Well, we're going to do the same thing if you come into the United States as a visitor and create a ruckus for us. We don't want it. We don't want it in our country. Go back and do it in your country. But you're not going to do it in our country.
He's right, okay? Like, he's completely, totally, absolutely right. You're engaging in support of Hamas. We don't need you here. We don't want you here. Go home, okay? Go home. Visa revoked. I don't think it's that hard. This is not rocket science, people, okay? You want people that are going to kind of play by the rules and not be difficult when they come to the country. Period. End of story. And yet this Nina lady, wow, is she annoying or what? I'm looking at your comments. Yeah, I know, Leslie, you don't like her either. I think she actually might be as annoying, if not more, than Hillary Clinton, which is just a very special place to be. But this was humiliating, absolutely humiliating for her, because she just tried to gaslight us all over again. Listen, MAGA's here. MAGA's here to stay. MAGA's succeeding. I believe in MAGA. It's one of the reasons I created 76 Research. Go get your free investing guide for the MAGA play right now. Investinmaga.com. Go there because there's a lot of really important stuff and names that you need to know. We look at the markets moving higher today. That's good news. Anyway, Nina is living in this alternative universe. She still has some little program, Sunlight something, funded, it's believed, by George Soros, that she's using to try and expose all the conservative disinformation. I'm sorry, but we've been right. We've been right on everything. Here she is. Let's listen to this sound. Again, this just a little bit at the top, because she's gaslighting you here, guys, in a huge way.
I believe it's my patriotic duty to do so because the premise of this hearing, the so-called censorship industrial complex, is a fiction that has not only had profound impacts on my life and safety, but on our national security. More alarmingly, this fiction is itself suppressing speech and stymieing critical research that protects our...
It's not fiction. Okay? Like, that's where you're just all wrong. It's not fiction. So Matt Taibbi was there too. She's calling out Matt Taibbi. Matt Taibbi, if you guys don't know him, he has like a Substack now. And he used to be a writer at Rolling Stone, not exactly somebody who you would consider conservative, right? But he got the Twitter files. And what he discovered in those Twitter files was that there was a ton of pressure that was being placed by the State Department and Nina's little group, right? Ministry of Truth, that she was running. The State Department was putting all this pressure on executives at Twitter to shut accounts down, including Donald Trump's account. The president of the United States of America had his Twitter account shut down because Nina and company thought that was the right thing to do in the spirit of making sure they didn't have any disinformation out there. That's pretty remarkable, right? And we've now since learned, oh yeah, it was absolutely pressure from up on high, coming from Nina and company and the Biden administration. They were doing the same thing to Facebook. Look at what Mark Zuckerberg said. It's his biggest regret that he didn't stand up sooner to all of the pressure that they put on them. So this woman is out there trying to say, no, that's all false. She just has her own version of truth. She reminds me of the NPR lady, except this one's really worse. I mean, maybe it's her diction or something. I don't know. Maybe it's that I saw her singing the Mary Poppins thing, I don't know, and I can't get it out of my head, but she's trying to gaslight you in a massive way. Now she has this new organization where she's doing much of the same, just not for the government, but she's getting heavily funded by people who want this stuff, right? Including, allegedly, George Soros, but she wouldn't admit it. Listen to this line of questioning today.
Ms. Jankowicz, your organization, the American Sunlight Project, claims to have a commitment to transparency and apparently does not extend to disclosing its donors. Has the American Sunlight Project received funding either directly or indirectly from the George Soros or his foundations, including the Open Society Foundation?
Thank you, Congressman. I've received a lot of threats for speaking out, and so I've decided that we are going to abide by the rules that other 501c4s in our country abide by, and we are not required to disclose our donors, small or large, because I frankly don't want them to be threatened the way that I have been.
So sunlight for other people, but not for your donors.
If you're interested in more sunlight, I welcome you to introduce some legislation to overturn Citizens United, sir.
Boom. You heard that? Sunlight for some, but not for your donors. We're not allowed to know who her donors are. Again, it's believed George Soros is one of the biggies because she needs to still do her job to control information, all that misinformation. What did they tell us? Oh, that was misinformation. Remember 51X Spooks actually wrote a big piece in Politico, a letter, right? They all signed their name to that one because Hunter Biden's laptop was not real. That was just misinformation fed to you, says Nina, says the 51X Spooks, courtesy of Rudy Giuliani. Of course, Nina didn't have her big job back then. That was actually during the campaign. I mean, if that's not campaign interference by deep state, I don't know what it is. And then they moved forward and they shut down the Twitter account at the New York Post, which had published the story. Don't ever forget that. As much as she's trying to tell you otherwise, we know exactly what went down. And you know what? If they could have, they would have done even more. What was Biden's biggest regret? What did he tell Susan Page, the reporter who interviewed him on his way out the door? He said his biggest regret was that he didn't control the disinformation better. Wow. I mean, these people are something else here.
Number one regret is that he's not going to be there for 4 more years, because I think he was not. I had the last print interview with George W. Bush. He was ready to get out of the Oval Office. Not so much Joe Biden. He wishes he could stay there. But he named 2 things about his biggest disappointments. One was the difficulty in combating misinformation, including from Donald Trump. And the second thing he mentioned was their failure to act more quickly to get shovels in the ground from that huge infrastructure bill, because he says that would have demonstrated to Americans the value of that spending.
Oh, yeah. Like there was lots of value with that spending. Give me a break. That was the spending to nowhere. That's why we have all this inflation, guys, because they were printing trillions of dollars. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer with their multi-trillion-dollar thing. You had him, Biden, with his 3rd stimulus check, and then you had the Fed printing for days and days. Like, I mean, it was unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it. I kept pounding the table. I mean, even I was actually concerned when Trump came out with the 2nd stimulus check in the summer of 2020. I'm like, this is not good. You're not going to get people back to work. You're going to have inflation, et cetera. And then Biden came through with round 3. It was a disaster. But I went back and looked at the transcript, and yeah, that was his biggest regret, not controlling the information well enough. Nina, I guess you didn't do your job.
We're doing work in the public interest. I know this intimately. In my written testimony, I explain in detail the lies that upended my life when my appointment to lead the DHS Disinformation Governance Board was announced. As demonstrated by both the board's...
I'm sorry, but the name itself, Disinformation Governance Board. I mean, does that not sound dystopian or what? And then you look at her and it all makes sense.
Founding documents and my 5-hour sworn testimony before your colleagues on the Judiciary Committee, the board's mission was to protect civil rights, civil liberties, privacy, and the First Amendment, the very subject of this hearing. Many continue to lie that the board was a censorship body because it's politically useful to them. That lie was the first chapter in the tall tales about the so-called censorship industrial complex that have since emerged. They've been buoyed by the Twitter files, which falsely allege that Twitter executives were colluding with government to censor disfavored content.
They did. Again, need I remind you, they shut down the president's Twitter account. I mean, the Ayatollah could have one all day long, but not President Trump. Nope. You know why? Because they didn't want him to win. They wanted Biden to win. That's why you had the 51X spooks doing what they were doing. That's why you had all the infrastructure, right, with the mainstream media promoting one narrative. It was crazy. Honestly, one of the craziest things I've ever seen. I've been a journalist for a while, okay, in mainstream media for major networks for like 20 years. I have never seen anything like this. But then I stumbled across this, Smith-Mundt Act of 1948. You see, we put in place a system to have a Chinese wall between the propaganda that we would promote overseas because we wanted certain positions to be reflected overseas versus the propaganda that would be allowed back home. None of it was allowed back home. You could not use taxpayer dollars, you see, to push some kind of propaganda message here at home. You could do so overseas because you wanted to influence who was elected because, you know, it meant something for oil prices or this, that, and the other in terms of our trade relationships. And so we realized we couldn't fight everything, right, with wars. So instead we decided we'd fight it with words and we'd use taxpayer dollars to do it, but you couldn't turn it on itself. Oh, not until Obama came along and he decided in defense of democracy, we have to defend democracy back here. So we're going to allow for these taxpayer dollars to be used on ourselves. Mike Pence, former State Department official, now committed. His whole career is about trying to make sure we preserve our First Amendment rights and we get rid of this propaganda and use of taxpayer dollars for this propaganda. He explained it well recently on Joe Rogan's show.
What was done then under Obama was the effective repeal of it. It was called the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act. But the modernization got rid of the whole purpose of it, the firewall, because at the time the media and media control was seen as the linchpin crux of winning the Cold War, piping in pro-U.S. Media influence because everything moved after World War II from kinetic warfare and military occupation. You know, we used to militarily occupy the Philippines, for example, after we won the Spanish-American War, but that was banned under international law territorial acquisition by military force in 1948. So we had to win.
So we had to win another way, right? So this is what we did. And the CIA was really good about getting its message out. Again, you just couldn't do this back here at home, right? This was not allowed. You couldn't take taxpayer dollars and turn it on ourselves.
Make any media narrative go viral in any country on earth because of the suite of CIA proprietary media functions and its distribution network, especially when the U.S. had first mover advantage in radio and print. It's basically the U.S. and U.K. were the only games in town, really, in having robust radio, film, TV, and print media. So the Smith-Mundt said, okay, you can do that abroad. You can plant fake news stories in France. You can, have propaganda blare into Africa or Western Europe or Central Asia, but that can't come home. You can't psyop our own people with your propaganda organ abroad, because the whole point of authorizing this is that we get cheaper gas, we get import-export markets, we get a high standard of living, because if a foreign government doesn't want to give up its resources or allow a U.S. military base or allow joint partnerships or exports of goods or U.S. multinational corporations to operate there, then the American people suffer economically. So it was always designed.
It was always designed to help the American people, not to be turned on itself. And again, it's Obama that we have to thank. Suddenly, everything changed in 2013. They put this forward in 2012. By 2013, they could use the money against us. And what did they do? Throughout the Trump presidency, and then 2020 for sure. And then you look at 2024, you look at the numbers, and it's astounding how much money was being poured into mainstream media with a certain narrative that they wanted them to portray. David Sachs, the crypto czar, now, by the way, brilliant guy, brilliant investor, was one of the original PayPal guys with Elon. He said it well.
Okay, so we knew the U.S. government runs a $2 trillion deficit every year. We're in debt almost $40 trillion. And we also knew that anytime anyone tries to cut anything in Washington, the whole city screams bloody murder. Okay, so the question is just why? Well, now we know. The money is all going to them. It's like round tripping to them. New York Times, getting paid. Politico, getting paid. Bill Kristol, perennial warmonger, getting paid. Ukraine, getting paid. Like 11 out of 12 publications, Ukraine, getting paid.
Incredible.
Viktor Orban, who's the prime minister of Hungary, was saying that he's very popular in Hungary. His political opposition, funded by USAID. In Poland, the left-wing political opposition funded by USAID, and on and on and on it goes.
BBC. You wonder why everyone in the UK is so, yeah.
Like
I couldn't believe the BBC is getting paid.
Every left-wing organization in the world seems to be getting paid by this slush fund at USAID, which disperses about $50 billion a year. That's $1 billion a week. That's actually
this
a lot
is crazy. So for Nina to get up there on Capitol Hill and humiliate herself again, almost worse than the Mary Poppins incident, is really quite something. She clearly believes in the cause, so to speak, the misinformation that they just want to keep pitching over and over and over and over to us.